Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans. From the West Coast, I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Sunday, August 31st, 2025, and thank you for joining me while I talk to myself about number 3 Ohio State's gritty, hard-fought 14-7 home victory over number 1 Texas yesterday. It was Ohio State's first home win over a top-ranked opponent since beating number 1 Iowa in 1985. And now dating back to last season, Ryan Day and the Buckeyes are currently on a 6-game winning streak against top 5 opponents. And yesterday was their second win over the country's number 1 team within the calendar year. Now, in our preview pod, I talked about the program's struggles in regular season marquee non-conference games over the last 20 years. Ohio State was only 2-5 in those games since 2005. I think we can officially say now that Ryan Day has figured out how to win these games. Yesterday afternoon was his second straight win in this type of game. The other was the 21-10 victory over number 5 Notre Dame in the 2022 season opener. And look, if we add last season's home playoff win over number 7 Tennessee to the tally, the Buckeyes are now vastly improved at defending the shoe against elite non-conference opponents. I think the home crowd also deserves a Buckeye leaf as well, because they've been really great in the last few games like these that have happened in the Horseshoe. By all accounts, the atmosphere in Ohio Stadium yesterday was electric and very disruptive to the Longhorn offense. So huge credit to the Ohio State fans yesterday as well. I think this was a championship DNA, muscle memory. We just know how to do this type of a win for the Buckeyes. I mean, Ryan Day figured out how to win these games during last season's playoff run to the national title. And even when things aren't going particularly well, which was the case for the Ohio State offense most of the afternoon, Day and the Buckeyes just find a way to win these games. Ohio State will almost assuredly be the nation's number 1 team in both major polls later this week. And with an overmatched FCS opponent coming to town next Saturday, followed by a MAC opponent, then an off week, the Buckeyes will have the next few weeks to rest up from yesterday's slugfest with the Longhorns. Expect a fair amount of load management by the coaching staff of Ohio State starters in the coming weeks. So as I like to do on Sundays, I'm going to tick down a short list of observations from yesterday's performance. As always, I'm going to assume you watched and know what happened, so I'm not going to do a full game recap for you today. Now, I think we have to start with the play of the Ohio State defense, a unit that was replacing its coordinator and 8 starters from last season. Ryan Day was, I thought, harshly and unfairly criticized for hiring Matt Patricia to be his new coordinator after Jim Knowles left for Penn State. I frankly never understood the criticism. Patricia won 3 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator in New England. How anybody thought he wasn't qualified to run the defense at Columbus never made a shred of fucking sense to me. And look, yesterday, Patricia silenced his critics as the Buckeye defense confused and harassed Arch Manning, holding the vaunted Longhorn offense scoreless until the 3:28 mark of the fourth quarter. Ross Fulton, probably the best Ohio State film nerd out there, said on X yesterday during the game, quote, "This defensive scheme is way beyond what Knowles was doing," end quote. So I thought that was a huge endorsement of what Matt Patricia did yesterday, that quote, and then, of course, what we saw on the field. The Silver Bullets held Texas to 336 yards of total offense and forced 4 different turnovers on downs, which included a 4th down stop on Arch Manning at the Ohio State 1-yard line with 6:40 to play in the third quarter, and another 4th down stop from the Ohio State 9-yard line in the fourth quarter. Davison Igbinosun broke up a pass from Arch Manning to Parker Livingstone in the corner of the end zone to end that scoring threat. I thought Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews were awesome yesterday. They held Texas receivers Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore to only 4 receptions for 41 yards. And Matthews came up with a gorgeous interception of Manning at the end of the third quarter, which the Buckeye offense would eventually convert into a touchdown to take what seemed like an insurmountable 14-zip fourth quarter lead. Matthews also deflected another Manning pass in the fourth quarter that was nearly intercepted by Sonny Styles. In fact, the play was actually ruled an interception on the field and then overturned by replay. Matthews finished with the defense's highest overall PFF grade of 80 and highest coverage grade of 84.6. It was a great performance by Matthews. And look, a lot of folks nationally don't know who Jermaine Matthews is, but if you're a Buckeye fan, if you follow the program at all, then you know who Jermaine Matthews is. And we were all anticipating this kind of a moment from Matthews. Awesome debut by Jermaine Matthews as the full-time starter at that spot yesterday. Arch Manning, the preseason Heisman favorite and presumed number one pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, finished the afternoon an underwhelming 17 of 30 for 170 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. According to Heather Dinich of ESPN, Manning finished with an off-target percentage of 37%, the worst by a Texas quarterback in any game of the last decade. I thought we'd see more of Manning as a runner in this game, but he finished the day with only 10 carries for 38 yards. Though on the whole, the Texas rushing attack was pretty effective. The Longhorns finished the afternoon with 166 yards rushing at 4.5 yards per carry. That's perhaps my only critique of an otherwise stellar defensive performance by the Buckeyes. Texas did gash them a little bit in the run game. Now, I thought linebacker Arvell Reese was the best defensive player on the field for either team yesterday. Reese led all defensive players in this game with 4 pressures. He had the game's only quarterback sack. He finished the afternoon with 9 tackles, which included a 4th down stop on C.J. Baxter at the Ohio State 43-yard line to end the Longhorns' first possession of the game. Reese finished with an excellent PFF tackling grade of 81.7. I thought Reese announced his stardom to the college football world on the game's biggest stage yesterday. It was an awesome performance. The sky is the limit for Reese. He's going to have a monster season for the Buckeyes. I thought nose tackle Caden McDonald was also a beast in this game. McDonald finished with 8 tackles, which is a ton, by the way, for a nose tackle. And, of course, he was right in the middle of that 4th and goal stop on Arch Manning. Finally, I love what I watched from safety Jalen McClain, who was playing the first real meaningful snaps of his college career yesterday. McClain finished with 8 tackles and the defense's highest PFF grade for tackling of 85.1. And in the fourth quarter, it was McClain who took away Arch Manning's first read on the 4th down pass that fell incomplete from the Ohio State 9-yard line. Bill Landis said on Substack that the play was actually designed to go to Ryan Wingo on a drag route, but McClain jumped the route, forcing Manning into a much more difficult throw to the corner of the end zone, which Davison Igbinosa knocked down to end that scoring threat. Now, outside of Caden Curry's stop of Arch Manning on 4th and goal at the Ohio State 1-yard line in the third quarter, it was Curry that was actually credited with the tackle. I would have liked to see a little bit more from the defensive ends in this game. It seemed like a mostly quiet afternoon for that group from a pass rush perspective. Now, losing Kenyatta Jackson in the third quarter to what has been largely reported as a concussion certainly didn't help matters. I think that group is going to be fine, but they weren't as impactful against a banged-up, inexperienced Texas offensive line as I had anticipated. Now, it was a largely underwhelming performance from the Ohio State offense yesterday. The Buckeyes finished with only 215 yards of total offense. That was their lowest output since last season's home loss to Michigan. Now, I think you have to mostly credit an excellent Texas defense for that, but Ohio State played far from a clean game on that side of the ball. There were several uncharacteristic drops by Buckeye receivers, including Jeremiah Smith, who had 2. Max Clare and Brandon Inniss had 1 apiece. On 4th and 1 from the Texas 49-yard line on Ohio State's first possession of the game, Clare dropped what should have been an easy catch for a first down. That was, I thought, one of Julian Sain's best throws of the game, and the Buckeyes turned the ball over on downs. That same play was actually designed to go to Jeremiah Smith on a go route, who was one-on-one with the safety, and Sain just missed him. Sain actually got an earful from Ryan Day when he got to the sidelines after that play. So, a little clunkiness in the passing game, to be sure, and I guess that's to be expected given the opponent, given that this was the first game out of training camp for Ohio State. So again, far from a clean game for the Ohio State passing game. The Ohio State running game was also pretty much non-existent. Only 89 yards on 31 carries for 2.9 yards per carry yesterday. I said in our preview pod that I thought 150 rushing yards probably wins this game for the Buckeyes, but ironically, Texas finished with 166. I thought C.J. Donaldson was far and away Ohio State's best running option in this game. He finished with 67 yards on 19 carries. That included a 2-yard touchdown run on 4th and goal in the second quarter. To me, it seemed like James Peoples was really pressing in this game. Now, granted, he was going up against the nasty Texas front with some excellent linebackers. But I thought there were some open running lanes for Peoples, and he just couldn't seem to find the open hole. It was also a rough day in pass protection for Peoples. He finished with a dreadful pass blocking grade of 11.2 according to PFF. I'm not worried about Peoples. I think he's going to be fine. I think C.J. Donaldson is also going to be fine. But I do wonder if what we saw yesterday opens the door for Bo Jackson to start getting some carries. From what I saw of Jackson in the spring game, he's just got a lot more burst than Peoples and Donaldson. And I think that was something that was definitely missing from the rushing attack yesterday. Just not a lot of acceleration from Peoples and Donaldson. They seemed a little slow to get started on many of their carries. Now, I really liked what I saw from Julian Sain in this game, and maybe I should have led with this when I start talking about the offense. Sain was calm, cool, and collected. He took really good care of the football. He managed to avoid the catastrophic mistakes that many young quarterbacks make in games of these stakes. He also, what I also loved is he did not let the early drops by Max Clare and Jeremiah Smith really bother him, right? He did not hang his head after those plays. And when he was pressured, which wasn't that often, thanks to some pretty good pass protection by the offensive line, I thought he handled it really, really well. Sain finished the afternoon 13 of 20 for 126 yards. That included a 40-yard touchdown pass to Carnell Tate, which was slightly underthrown, and Tate made a spectacular juggling catch with a Texas defensive back draped all over him. But I thought Sain's best throw of the day was on 3rd and 3 from the Ohio State 9-yard line in the second quarter. Sain was flushed from the pocket by Colin Simmons Jr., one of the best pass rushers in the game, and he threw a pinpoint pass on the run from deep in his own end zone to Carnell Tate for a 9-yard completion and a first down. I thought that was a preview of coming attractions for the Buckeye passing game. So if you were disappointed from what you saw from the offense, from the passing game yesterday, just remember that play, because I think we're going to see a lot more, fireworks than what we were treated to yesterday, which were just enough, to get a win over the number 1 team in the country. I'm going to take Ryan Day at his word, because he certainly earned the benefit of the doubt that an intentionally vanilla game plan aimed at avoiding mistakes was largely the reason for 215 yards of total offense yesterday. In the postgame, Day talked about not asking more of his young quarterback than what was absolutely needed. He credited Brian Hartline for calling a, quote, unselfish game. And he said, quote, in week 1, we can't beat ourselves. We wanted to let them beat us. The one thing we didn't want to do, I didn't want to do, is put him, he's talking about Sain, in a bad spot. It's just not fair to him. Now, coming out of it, quite honestly, I think he could have handled it, end quote. So I think if you're looking for a good sign, for good signs about the Ohio State offense, Ryan Day certainly doesn't seem to be worried about what he saw. And he openly admitted that they had a very vanilla game plan that was really mostly focused on just not making mistakes. And then in hindsight, looking back on the performance by Sain, that he probably could have put more on Sain's shoulders than he did. So I took that as a really good sign. While the running game left a lot to be desired, and the PFF run blocking grades for the Ohio State offensive line also reflect that, I thought the pass protection was excellent. According to Stephen Means of Cleveland.com, in 23 pass blocking snaps, the offensive line only gave up 1 pressure to the vaunted Texas pass rush. We barely heard Colin Simmons Jr.'s name mentioned in the telecast yesterday. And look, at the end of the day, pass protection is how this offensive line will be judged, because the passing game is the tip of the spear for the Ohio State offense this season. So I was thrilled by what I saw from the offensive line in pass protection yesterday. I think it bodes really well for the rest of the season. Ohio State is unlikely to see a better pass rush than what they saw from the Longhorns yesterday. Maybe only Penn State will show them something that's better until the college football playoff. It was a mostly frustrating day for Jeremiah Smith. To me, it seemed like he was pressing a little bit, as evidenced by those early drop passes. Smith was also uncharacteristically animated on the 4th down incompletion that ended Ohio State's first possession on downs. He was visibly frustrated after Julian Sain failed to find him on that deep route. To me, it seems Smith maybe was overly eager to make amends for his one-catch performance against the Longhorns in the national semifinals last season. He was a little bit better than that yesterday, but not by much. Only 43 yards receiving on 6 catches. Give credit to a great Longhorn secondary, which employed frequent double teams on Smith. And look, quite frankly, also got away with a little grabbing and holding throughout the game as well. There was one play in particular that I remember where the Texas defensive back held Smith by his helmet as he was breaking off his route, and nobody from the SEC officiating crew threw the flag there. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Smith's going to be fine, and look, he might as well get used to it. Texas is not going to be the last opponent using those kinds of tactics to try to stop him. I caught up with Page after the game yesterday, and he said he felt the same way coming out of this game that he did after Ohio State's 1-point loss at Oregon last season, which was that we just watched the 2 best teams in the country, and that it was very likely we would see one another again in the postseason, and that's how I feel as well. Look, Texas fans, I'm sure, are disappointed. Maybe they feel like they let a lot of golden opportunities get away in this game. But like Julian saying in the Buckeyes, I think Arch Manning and the Longhorns are only going to get better. I don't think anybody is going to want to play either of these teams come December. And, again, I would not be surprised in the least if these are the last 2 teams standing in late January. But right now, the big difference between Ohio State and Texas, and this is something Paige and I also discussed yesterday, is Ohio State knows how to win these games. There is a championship DNA, an institutional knowledge that they can draw on to be successful in these games. I mean, they've won the last 6 of these in a row. Texas, on the other hand, is still figuring out how to find those extra inches in the margins to win these matchup games. I think Penn State, by the way, has the same issue. And I know there's a lot of football to be played before November 1st, but that's why I'm extremely confident about Ohio State's chances in that game. All right, that's going to do it for me. Short and sweet. Paige, Chad, and I will be back with another pod this coming Thursday. We're going to spend a little more time looking back at this huge win over the Longhorns, and we'll take a look at Ohio State's next opponent, Grambling, as well. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks. You've been listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.